Hey everybody, this is Cameron Cloutier with Obnoxious and Anonymous, and today I am joined by someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. She's a 3-time Academy Award nominee for films such as The Hustler, Carrie, Children of a Lesser God. She's been nominated for 9 Emmys and won for 1986's Promise, co-starring James Garner and James Woods. She's a 4-time Golden Globe nominee and winner for 1990 in Twin Peaks, playing the role of Catherine Martell. You've also seen her in shows such as Did Like Me, Frasier, Murder, She Wrote, ER, Will and Grace, Law and Order, SVU. And it is my great privilege on behalf of the website alternativenation.net to introduce to you Ms. Piper Laurie. How are you doing today?
Oh, my goodness. After that introduction, I've got to be great.
It's wonderful to be talking with you. I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
So I have a question for you right off the bat. You have worked in the industry for quite a long time now, and you've seen trends come and go. You've seen actors come and go. What do you think of the film industry in its current state in 2014? Where are we right now?
I think it's too bad that so much money has to be spent to make a movie. Certainly, they're terrific small movies, and it makes me sad that it's become such a huge commercial thing. The same thing is happening in the theater too. You know, to go to a movie or to the theater, it's really expensive. I don't see how most people do it, but I guess they do.
Because, for a long time, obviously Westerns were a big part of the Hollywood culture. And now, fast forward 60 years, and now it's superhero movies and all that stuff. Trends come and go. But for some reason, the studios today, talking with other directors and people in the industry, they can't believe that you have to spend $200 million to make a movie or $10,000 to make a movie. The studios don't want to play in that $3 to $4 million range anymore for people to make, quality, smaller budget films.
I'm like anybody else who goes to the movies, and most women I know don't really rush to the opening of a big blockbuster car crash murder movie. It's just we tend to go to, and the men I know too, to softer, exciting, colorful, humorous, romantic, deeply feeling movies.
Can you recall one that you've seen recently that you can wholeheartedly recommend?
Well, I'm way behind on the movies. I just recently saw something on television. Will give you an idea of what my life is like right now. Oh my God! It's a movie that's about 50 years old, but it was so moving, so deeply moving.
It just seems that, like, back, let's say in the 40s and 50s, obviously there's always been that stigma of people writing for Hollywood, feeling screwed over by the industry. But it just, when you go back and you watch a lot of those classic films today, the writing is on a level that would not even be attempted today in a lot of films and TV, which is shocking. It's like they truly believed in writing intelligent human beings as opposed to dumbing it down so that somebody who just flipped the channel would know automatically what was happening.
Well, I find it really hard to follow the storylines on most of the new television shows, which isn't necessarily bad. But I do think there are not very many writers out there who are saying, well, I'm going to write something really beautiful, something really meaningful. They want to make a living. I don't blame them. It's too bad. And when those things come along, they don't do very well. I think because the whole apparatus, the selling apparatus, doesn't really get behind it.
Well, it's interesting because in the last week, I'm sure you've heard the news that David Lynch and Mark Frost are going to bring back Twin Peaks in 2016 for Showtime. And, everyone's very excited about it. But it's funny because to think that, well, Twin Peaks is being brought back because it's a known property. People know what it is. But if it was 2014 today and Mark Frost and David Lynch walked into ABC to pitch the original version of Twin Peaks, I think they wouldn't even be given 5 minutes in a meeting.
Oh, I'm sure you're absolutely right. But there's also the fact that it's been ripped off so much through the years that it wouldn't seem original at all if you described it. I was just thinking about a scene that was in Carrie. Brian De Palma brought in overnight he decided to send a prop man out all over Los Angeles and buy every candle he could find, and he put it in the house, in Carrie's house, when the mother comes home. I mean, when she comes home to the mother. Mm-hmm. And the house was just blazing with all these lit candles, looking beautiful. And I couldn't think of any movie before that had really used that sort of an effect. I think probably in the 30s there were some horror movies that had 3 or 4 candles, but nothing quite like that. But now, since De Palma made Carrie, it's been copied so often.
And the ending of Carrie as well got ripped off by thousands of films. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you something real quick. My favorite thing about the film of Carrie, besides obviously the performances and everything, the writing, is the fact that if you strip away the supernatural spookiness of the story, it all comes down to that scene where you go up to Carrie's room and you're telling her, he's not going to come and pick you up. And it keeps showing you and Sissy looking out the window, waiting for her date to come pick her up from the prom. And I remember seeing that for the first time thinking, well, this is great, because if you take away all, like I said, the supernatural spookiness, here is a moment that is very truthful about a mother worried that her daughter's date is not going to come pick her up. Yeah, that's real. Yes, and I think, yes. and I think that's why the film, continues to live on, because if you take away all the horror stuff, it just works as a quality story and a quality film.
Yes. I never thought of it as a horror movie, to tell you the truth. It was something else.
And then they decided to turn it into some sort of comic book horror film with the remake. So.
Yeah. Too bad the musicals were not successful, because I think that if the storyline lends itself to music. Did you ever see any of those the musical versions?
No, I've only just heard about them.
I went to see the last revival, a new version of Carrie, the musical in New York. It was over a year ago, and I enjoyed the first act tremendously. They moved it around a bit, and but some of it was terrifically moving, and hearing the mother sing those thoughts and feelings, it was great.
Since we're on the subject of Carrie real quick, I know for 10 years you were kind of retired at the time, taking care of your daughter in New York and stuff. And I know that I've seen documentaries where you've said that when you got the script, you were asked to reread it again with a sort of like black comedy tone to it. How the script got to you since you were retired? How, was Brian De Palma just like thinking, I really want the woman from The Hustler to play the mom, or were you one of many that he was seeing that was interested for the part, or how did it come to you?
Well, it was actually 15 years since I had made The Hustler.
Right.
And I was living in upstate New York, in Woodstock, to be exact. And yes, I was there during the festival, which was a few miles away. But I had some friends over the years who kind of moved around. One of them became a producer at United Artists, Marcia Nassiter. And she was aware that Brian was looking for someone, and it just suddenly occurred to her that, and I'd known her years before. I hadn't seen her for many years, but she just thought of me. And so she saw Brian one day and said, well, what about Piper Laurie? And on the basis of that, they found the woman, Lily Veit, bless her, who had represented me last, and been years since I'd been in touch with her. So I just got a call one day from Lily's in the city in Manhattan, asking if she could send me a script, and I said sure. So she sent it to me, and I didn't like it. And as you've already heard, I misinterpreted on the second reading that it was a satire, a comedy. And on the basis of that, I decided to take up the offer to go into the city and meet with Brian, which I did. Took the train in, and he was very nice, and I guess he liked me. And by the time I took the train back to Woodstock, he had decided he wanted me to do it. So it was just through some, friends that I had known years before that thought of it.
Now, when you decided to take the part and you were doing your work on it as your background on her, did you go into the film still wanting to play her in a satirical light, or did you? Because I got to tell you, the way it comes across does not come off like you're making fun of Margaret White, but more of like you just are her, and the humor comes out of you being her as opposed to you going wink, wink, look at her,
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, it's hard for me to comment about that. All I know is that I went into the rehearsal period. They flew me out to California for a couple of weeks to rehearse the Sissy on our scenes. I had worked out some, I thought, really terrifically funny physical bits of comedy too. Like in that scene that you just mentioned, when we're waiting for the boy to show up, and I said he's not coming, And in this version, you see Margaret pulling her hair, but I did it in what I thought was a comical way. I mean, I really pulled myself across the room and back and forth with my hair, and Brian stopped me after the second time, and he said, hey, you can't do that. You're going to get a laugh. And that's the first time I realized that he really didn't want me, didn't think of it as what I thought it was supposed to be. So I changed what I did, but I changed it more in my head rather than superficially. I still did the physical thing, but not quite as broadly, and I made it more of an inner, real thing. And I also, when I finished that rehearsal period and went back to New York, I went to see Phantom of the Paradise, which I'd never seen, and it had just come out, and I saw how operatic it was and how big, and I thought, well, he likes that, so maybe I could make Margaret really big.
Right.
And so that's what I did. I didn't know how else to play those scenes because they were, to me, a little cliche as written. So I thought, well, I'll just go a little deeper. And so that's what I did.
Of course, the funny thing about it is years later, you would play Sissy Spacek's sister in a movie.
Yes, that was fun. It was like 25 years later, we played sisters, and I was the sweet, good one, which I am, and she was nasty, but that was great fun.
Let's just, if you don't mind, let me just ask you a couple quick questions about growing up. Your actual name is Rosetta Jacobs.
That's right, Yakubovich, before my father's father changed it when they entered the country.
Now, where does Rosetta come from as a family name?
Well, the first name is really Rose.
Okay.
And that was one of my ancestors. And the Etta, I don't know who Etta was, but when I started school, they put it together and called me Rosetta.
You lived in Michigan until you were 6 before you moved to LA, or did you move around before that?
I lived there till I was 5 and then came out to California. I remember a lot of things that are very vivid, and I don't know why I've kind of brained it. All of that's indelibly stamped there. All the details when I was a child. I remember we didn't have a car, so going in a car on a trip somewhere, local trip, with the family was somebody had a car, so we all piled in, and I remember going by those beautiful Michigan forests and wanting desperately to get out and get closer to them. I remember the building we lived in, and I remember a lot about it. And then my aunts and uncles, and we used to go to visit.
It must have been quite shocking to have like the snowy winters out there and then come out to Los Angeles where there's no winter. So.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I remember when we had a freak snowstorm or a sprinkling of snow. Yeah.
And when you came out here to California, did your father still like sell furniture, or did your family go into a different line of business when they came out here?
Well, it's not complicated at all, and I wrote about it. I wrote a book.
Right.
That's still out and available. No, I don't know, but I will be doing a recording of it soon.
I was gonna mention your book at the end of our conversation, but since it's been brought up, you can get it on Amazon right now. It's called "Learning to Live Out Loud: A Memoir" by Piper.
I don't. They can. They've sold them all. So.
Oh, I thought they still had the Kindle versions, maybe.
But it is called "Learning to Live Out Loud," and in it I wrote in detail about some of the painful things and some of the joyful things. My sister, God rest her, she was frail as a child and had asthma and hay fever, and my parents were desperate, and it was the end of the Depression, and my father was worried about keeping his job. So they found a rest home for children, asthmatic children. They also had all sorts of problems. And I was sent with her to keep her company. So my sister and I lived in this home up in the mountains in Tujunga for 3 years. I saw my parents a couple of times for a day or two when they could afford to come out to visit us. And that was a very important part of my life, which I was lucky enough to get to write out, to get out. And so my parents didn't come out until I was 9. And then I started life again.
What would you do to entertain yourself and your sister while you were in there? Were you writing? Were you putting on plays or?
Oh, no, I never spoke to anybody, but I used to climb trees and pick the walnuts and hide them in the ground like squirrels. Solitary stuff the kids do.
Right. Now, from what I understand, you were entered into a contest where these was years later, and the top prize would be a screen test.
Yes.
And from what I understand, the screen test didn't go quite as you had hoped. Can you tell us a little bit about that whole process?
Yes. Well, since I never spoke to anyone, and my parents were desperate, and they sent me to learn to elocution school on Saturday afternoons with my girlfriend who was studying the harp. So we'd walk over to this place, and I learned to recite 2 monologues, a comedy one and a dramatic one. And one day in 6th grade, the teacher said that everyone had to memorize a poem or something and do it in front of the class. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I already have memorized these monologues. So I chose to do the comedy one when it was my turn, and I got up, and I'm the kid who never talked to anybody, and I started in, and I was impersonating all these. It was called The Old Maid, and a lady on shipboard who impersonates all of her suitors with different accents. And so I started in, and just about 3 lines into it, and I was doing this horrible English accent. The children just broke up. They were just crazy with screaming and stomping their feet, and the teacher had to quiet them. And I kept going, and they were just hysterical, just enjoying this performance. And I don't know, it must have lasted about 6 minutes. And I finished, and the room exploded with applause and yelling, and I was shaking. I was sweating and shaking, and I managed to get back to my seat. And that was the moment that changed my life, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I'm getting carried away. Where was I going with this?
You were heading towards the screen test.
As part of my mother's plan to get me out of my shyness, she had enrolled me in this famous contest that the Herald Examiner used to have in Los Angeles, Better Babies Beauty and Talent Contest. So I was enrolled in the beauty part, and we took a picture. My sister took a picture of me with my mouth closed so they wouldn't see my crooked teeth, and they sent it in. But after that, I learned these monologues, and my mother began to think that maybe she should enroll me in the talent contest, and she did. There was still time, so I went down to Eastern Columbia, and there was a big room with a stage at one end, and there were hundreds of little kids running around, and not many boys, but lots of little girls with lipstick and rouge on and in fluffy dresses. Anyway, I had my turn, and I went up and I did my dramatic monologue where I was a little girl who had stolen money, and she was arrested, and she was pleading with the judge in an Italian accent, explaining that her mother was sick and that she stole the money to get medicine for her mother. And anyway, I was successful, and they put me in ahead in this contest, and I had to come down and do another piece, and so I did the comedy one, and I won one of the screen tests. But no one realized that I only talked when I had lines written for me. And so here I was at Warner Brothers. It was I was still 9, I think. And we went out on the streetcar or the bus. I don't remember. It's just I was in some sort of fugue state, and they put me on a high stool, and there was this huge monolith of a camera, and the director had them turn me around on their stools to photograph every angle of my face, and then they turned me to face the camera, and the director said, "And now, darling, we will see what sort of personality you have." And I just shrunk inside, and he said, "Darling, tell us your name." And I froze, and my chin, the only way I can describe it is if I had a magnet on my chin and my chest, and it just poof, went right down my chest. I could not pull my head up. It just stayed there. And they tried to cajole me into lifting my head and saying something, but I wouldn't. I couldn't. It was just extremely painful. And finally, when they told me I could go home, I lifted my head and we left. That was my prize, and I was hoping actually. We used to enter lots of contests in those days with send in candy wrappers and things like that. And there was one contest you had to, for a $25,000 brick house. It looked adorable, and that was one of my dreams, to live in a house. Mm-hmm. And my sister wrote the letter, and I just would dream about winning that house. That was more than a movie contract.
So how did Universal come into all this? How did they discover you?
During the war, I used to entertain with my sister. We'd do skits and things to make money for war bond drives and the Red Cross, and we went to Sawtelle and entertained the soldiers. And we took lessons from third-rate teachers and learned to do these skits and singing. And we used to do a song called When It's Sweet Onion Time in Bermuda. I'll breathe my love to you. And then on the second chorus, I dance around and throw scallions out of the basket that I carried to the audience. And it was really sort of silly stuff. And then I then took a few lessons with a wonderful actress named Hermine Sterler in an apartment. She lived in the Towers apartment on Highland, which is still there, and I pass it often. And I used to look out of that window at Hollywood and fantasize being a real actress. And she sort of taught me some important things about simplicity and being real in the work. And then I sort of dropped it when I became aware of boys for a couple of years, and then I found out about an acting class with professional actors who were in the movies already or in the theater, the Schneiders, and Benno and Betami Schneider. And I was about 15 then. I worked with them for 3 years and learned a lot, and used the one-act play that I was working on, the Tennessee Williams one-act play called This Property is Condemned, as my audition piece at Universal. And I was told I would only get to do the first 3 minutes of it, but that's what I decided to do, and I went with one of my friends from class, and we started the play, and I expected to be told, well, thank you very much, but I didn't come, and we just kept going, and they let us do the whole play. And I thought, I did really impress them, and they had tears in their eyes, and they, on the basis of that, they decided to give me a screen test, and they decided at that time to give Rock Hudson a screen test, and we did a scene together from a movie they made later on called Thunder on the Hill. Mm-hmm. It was a very sophisticated scene where Here I was 15, but I looked 12. And I was saying to Rock, I love you like this, all stirred up with fire in your eyes. And it was so hard for me to get those lines out. It was without laughing. But anyway, we were both signed, and immediately I was put into my first movie, which is called Louisa, and I played Ronald Reagan's daughter.
Now, did Universal come to you with a group of names to pick from, or did they just say to you one day, your new name is Piper Laurie?
Oh, I was already Piper Laurie.
Okay.
A man who came along and introduced himself to my mother and said I would like to be her manager. We were on a vacation out in the desert at some dude ranch, and this man approached my mother, and anyway, he invented the name, which I thought was sort of stupid. I didn't get it at all. But since I still didn't speak to people except when I was working as an actress, I accepted it, and the studio liked it. But I'm used to it now. I don't mind it. I even like it sometimes.
There was all these press releases saying that after you've made a number of films, whatever, that you enjoyed taking milk baths and eating gardenia petals for lunch. I mean, it's that is something that I can't even imagine somebody issuing out today as for an upcoming actress, you know.
Well, the world is very different.
Yes, it is.
God. Well, and you know, I thought, well, I'd read my contract the night before I signed it, and it had a morals clause, and I took all of this very seriously, and I thought I'd be sued or jailed or something if I didn't do what they told me to do, within reason. And so they kept putting out these press releases. It started on my first movie in Louisa. There was a scene when Edmund Gwenn, to impress Spring Byington, who was playing my grandmother, makes a salad for the whole family at the table. So in the scene, Edmund Gwenn tosses some petals from the marigolds that are on the table, in the middle of the table, tosses into the salad. And about 10 minutes later, I was walking around, and the press agent signed to the movie, Fred Banker, I'll never forget his name, had this glow in his eyes, and he came up to me and said, Piper, I have an idea. And so he called every wire service in town and gave them all exclusive interviews with their new young star who ate nothing but flowers. And everybody came. Day after day, I would have lunch in the commissary with this writer, whoever it was, and the kitchen would create some sort of plate with all sorts of edible things, flowers on it, and I ate them. I thought that was part of my job. And so for years, I was known as the girl who ate flowers or orchids, and then there were the milk baths thing, and then they put me in a short costume for Miss Firecracker. Every holiday that came along, I'd have a bathing suit or shorts on and in a costume of some sort. When I actually graduated from high school, I technically did it from the little schoolhouse on the lot. And I wore a cap and a little gown that came just to my waist, and some shorts and high heels. That I still have those graduation pictures that just, it makes me very sad because I was quite humiliated and I didn't know how to say no. It's a miracle that I actually, and I went from movie to movie doing these silly things that I didn't know how to handle that kind of comedy. You know, if I had a lot of technique, I suppose I could have. But I had been working on serious stuff, Tennessee Williams and all those real roles, and I couldn't handle the kind of comedy things they gave me.
Mm-hmm.
But they did give me, they made something of my name, and when I finally broke loose, I had something to bargain with, except most people wouldn't hire me because of it, because I had a reputation of being this insignificant, silly little thing.
So that's when you went to New York, right?
Yes. Well, I kept getting turned down. I went to New York and I auditioned, but I was even stopped from auditioning for a play that I knew I was just perfect for. The offer came out of the office and said, "We don't want you to audition because we don't want you. You are someone with your name in our play,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're very good." So I flew back to California. But somebody who had been in my acting class recommended me to someone in the East, a director in the East, for a live television show that Robert Montgomery presents. And they sent me a script, and it was a fabulous part, really dramatic one, and of a young girl. I played Lee Bowman's daughter. So I grabbed it, and I flew to New York, and that started my second career. And the next day I went up to see my agents at the Morris office. I'd never been there because there was nothing they could do for me. I was trapped. And I remember early on, when I was under contract
Mm-hmm.
to Universal, there was an offer from a great Italian director who directed Bicycle Thief. He wanted me for a movie, and Universal wouldn't release me. But so I then started getting offers for live television shows and got to work with Sidney Lumet and excuse me, John Frankenheimer, and I did theater. I did some one-act plays that Molly Kazan wrote. I had a great new career. It was very exciting for me.
Today, there's not so much a stigma from people going from film to TV, but back then, you did some TV series and TV movies after you got nominated for an Oscar. I mean, were people kind of looking down on those choices you were making, or were you just like, I don't give a crap, I'm going to do the work I want to do?
No, when I started to do live television, I was very, very selective. And I got great reviews because I was working on great material.
Right.
I'd take like 3 jobs a year and put myself on a strict budget so I could afford to do that. And I had no family to worry about. And out of that came the first really good movie I ever did, which was The Hustler. Actually, Bob Rossen had seen me in the 2 one-act plays I had done on stage. And then I did a Glass Menagerie on Broadway, the 20th anniversary production with Maureen Stapleton and Pat Hingle and George Grizzard. It was a good production, and we ran for quite a long time. I got married somewhere around that time. And I did some television shows, I think, I find it unpleasant to talk about.
All right. Well, let's change the show.
They were not super wonderful
right
choices. They were okay.
You took your break, then you came back with Carrie, and your career has just been going ever since. One amusing thing I want to ask you about is obviously you were there during the whole Twin Peaks fervor and all that, but a year before you were even in a bigger fervor, and that is the Corey Haim, Corey Feldman fervor. What was that like working on Dream a Little Dream?
Yeah, that was fun to do only because I got to work with Jason Robart, who I had worked with before and in live television, and worked with again, actually. But those kids were kind of a pain in the ass, frankly. And I remember it was very disorganized. Nobody knew what scenes we were going to do or where. It was the most disorganized movie I've ever been on.
Even more than the Dario Argento one.
Oh, much more so.
Okay. So I know when you got the script for Twin Peaks that you were interested in doing it, to work with David Lynch, and it was kind of nice that you had kind of a smaller little part so you could kind of enjoy the Washington State area, Snoqualmie, the Seattle area. When the pilot was done, did you go to that what is considered now a legendary screen of the pilot, or did you just wait and because some people got it on VHS and watched it at home, or did you see it in the theater when they premiered it?
No, I think I saw it at home. But I had a very tiny part in the pilot.
Right.
It was just at the end, and I remember just saying, "You bitch," something like that.
Right.
But it was promising, and I really liked David Lynch, and I liked his work, and so I hung in there.
Were you surprised that Catherine Martell went from Catherine with a K to Catherine with a C?
Well, it's with a C, isn't it? I mean, you tell me. I'm not sure.
Oh, the pilot, it was with a K, and then the series, it was with a C.
So. Oh, I didn't even know that.
So I know a lot of people listening to this interview are huge Twin Peaks fans, so forgive me as I indulge them for a second. A lot of your scenes were with Jack Nance. Can you talk a little bit about working with him? Because he was coming off of, he had quit drinking and was turning his life around at that time. What was he like to work with?
Very strange. But he thought I was pretty strange, too, I think. But he was very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
He was very naive. And I remember when David Lynch asked me to go into disguise as a man for the second season, and that it was important for no one to know that it was me, not even the crew or the actors. He didn't know it was me, and we worked very closely. He just didn't get it. And the first day on the set, I remember I was told about this, that he went to David and Mark Frost and said, "Boy, that new actor is weird." And he just on it all the way until we used to have a lot of little parties. About every couple of weeks, there'd be some excuse for a party, and they'd rent a place as a club somewhere, and the whole cast and crew would come, and we'd have fun. And it was at one of those that he came up to me and had read the script where Catherine reveals herself. And he was really pretended to be pissed off at me. And maybe he really was. But when I look at some of those scenes that we had together, when I was Fumio, and we were nose to nose in scenes and talking about Broadway musicals and things like that. And he really didn't know it was me. It was terrible for me because it was such fun, and I couldn't laugh because I'd ruined my makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd split the pieces that, they took 4 hours to put on my face.
This is years later, so I'm just going to ask you this. Did you know, at the end of the season 1 premiere, or season 1 finale that Mark Frost directed, when you were in the mill and the mill was on fire, how early were you told that you were going to come back as this other character, or did you not find out until the script started coming to you? Did you think you were out of the show, or did you know you were coming back?
We ended the first season,
right?
And then I got a phone call from David Lynch, who said, "Rosie, I want Catherine to come back to town in disguise as a man, as a businessman, and make all sorts of trouble. And I'd like you to take a few weeks and think about what sort of man, foreigner, she could be. Mexican or Frenchman or whatever." And so I just hung up, and it was so, I don't think I've ever been so happy. It was like he was giving me such a gift of childhood, of the kind of make-believe, of inventing stuff that you only do as a child. I mean, I had such power here. I could create my own part. And so I chose to be a Japanese businessman because I thought it was less predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we started back to work, and David was completely accepting of it. He didn't question me. He said, "Great," and that's what we did.
And where did the voice come from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just assumed that they would have some apparatus on the set or later that would electronically do something to my voice.
Right.
But we thought of everything but that. And so the first day came of shooting, and there was nothing there. So I was just forced into doing what I could do, is to just throw my voice down into my chest and get that guttural sound, which was really hard on my vocal cords.
Right.
It hurts when I even think about it now. I kept sipping liquids in between takes.
And
that was me. That was my voice.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah.
I could tell. I just was curious how often you practiced that in the mirror.
I didn't practice it. I just thrust into it because we were about to shoot and they had nothing to help. No electronic equipment. So I just did what I could.
Sure. And what was it? Because the kind of the three main people you acted with the most were Jack Nance, Richard Beamer, and Joan Chen. And it seemed like each one of those actors definitely brought out another aspect of you as an actress playing Catherine. And, I just thought it's so funny because the way you would treat Pete, and then the way you would kind of like be really witchy towards Josie, and then the way you kind of could let down your guard but be a little devilish with Richard Beamer's Benjamin Horne. Just extraordinary work. And, I just want you to know that, some 25 years later, there's a reason why people are still attracted to your character.
I don't know. I mean, by the seat of my pants, I don't know. There was just, I think it was all written. It was written, and I just went with what was written.
Sure.
And there was a wonderful, wonderful feeling on the set. For me, anyway, it was very joyful.
Well, there's that wonderful scene that kind of comes out of nowhere in the second season of where you just show up in the sheriff's station and you tell Harry this long story about being lost in the woods and coming across your childhood home. And it's such a kind of a magical, emotional scene that ends with a punchline about, that you ran out of food or something. You had to come back.
And the whole thing was totally made up by her. She just, I think she probably went to San Francisco and had a holiday. It was just totally made up. She was,
Oh, so she wasn't talking about the white and black lodge then. It was just a completely made up story.
oh yes, that whole thing was totally made up. I remember driving to and from the studio. I would pass this great tree on Sepulveda Pass. And one night I stopped, and there were I pulled in, and there were some huge branches that had fallen from the tree. And I got just the choice one and took it to work with me and gave it to the prop man to make a walking stick for me to use in that scene. It was a beautiful walking stick, and he wouldn't give it to me. Wait, stop shooting.
Well, it's definitely a nice touch. In 1992, David Lynch went off to make Fire Walk with Me, and Mark Frost went off to do Storyville, and you went off with Mark Frost to do Storyville. Were you asked to be in Fire Walk with Me, or had just had other commitments and weren't able to do it?
No, I was never asked to be in Fire Walk with Me. I think I read a script, but I don't think there was a part in it.
Right. I wasn't sure.
But,
I wasn't sure if the script I read was a later draft or whether an original first draft had you in it. So
I don't know. I never saw it. If I was in it, I never saw it. So, and I didn't see the movie. So
to this day, you haven't seen it?
No.
Oh wow.
I don't know. I don't know.
Just seemed too different from the show then.
Yeah, just I don't know. It's a good question. I should see it.
Are you have you been talked to at all about coming back for the new Showtime show?
No. I hope they bring me back. I'd love to.
I hope so too, because I think because Catherine is the only one left because Pete and Andrew Packard are blown up in the bank. So we have to know what happens to her next.
Yeah, well, it'll be very interesting what they decide to do. Well, and I haven't seen David in years.
What was your reaction? Did you, when you found out they were going to bring it back, were you like, oh my?
Well, I used to hear those rumors all the time, and they were just that. So when someone called me the other day and said that it had been announced, I just poo-pooed it. I thought it was not real. And then I got a few more calls. And I read some stuff online or something, and I think I guess it's real. I guess it'd be fun. I hope I get asked.
Me too. How was Mark Frost as a director when you worked with him on Storyville? Did you enjoy that experience?
I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed working with him on the series too.
I was surprised.
I got to work more than I did with David, and that what made me sad. I didn't get to work with David all that much on the series, but it was really terrific when I did. I mean, terrific fun for me. No, I loved working with him with Mark Frost on Storyville. Yeah, and I loved being there. We shot the whole thing in New Orleans, and you know who was my son in that? Oh God, I've had a senior moment. He's got a big series on television, The Blacklist.
Oh, James Spader.
Yeah, he played my son in that. We look alike.
I was just surprised that Mark Frost only directed one episode of Twin Peaks, because his episode he directed, the season 1 finale, is one of the best directed episodes. So
he only did one?
He's credited as only directing one, but I'm sure he was helping some of the others. But
I was sure that he had directed more. But
I'm sure he did. He just probably didn't take the credit.
Probably. But he would, there was a nice quality of trust and intimacy there with Mark and also with David. And I would do almost anything they'd ask me to do. Some of the fun stuff, I did exactly what they told me to do.
Well, obviously, you played a Japanese businessman, so. Now, what's interesting is you did two films kind of right on top of each other that could not be more different. You did The Crossing Guard with Sean Penn, and then you did The Faculty with Robert Rodriguez.
Let's see, The Crossing Guard, she was a very real person.
Right.
He was funny, and I got to say the F word for the first time on the screen. It was probably it was the second time I ever said it out loud. I'm revealing too much about myself. But the first time I said it was I was still at Universal, and they had acting classes that I rarely got to go to because I was usually making a movie. And they had a guest that day. It was Edward G. Robinson. And he was counseling us, the group of contract players. And he gave us an exercise that we all should do something that we had never done before, right there in the class. And so when it was my turn, I said, fuck, and out loud, and everyone looked at me. It was, I shocked them, or confused them. In the other movie, I was a nice, real teacher. It was all real. And, that I became a horrible person, that was real, too. I didn't see, a core thing that was very different. I think Margaret White and Carrie was different. Or some of the things I did on live television. It didn't require a radical pulling anything out of myself that I hadn't dealt with for a long time, or
Sure. I was referring in terms of like just the styles of the two filmmakers and the tones that they elicit from their work are, one's more like gritty and one's more like hyperbolic, and so, and the fact that you can be at home in both of those types of works is a great testament.
Because with Argento, that was something else.
Oh yes. Did you enjoy making Trauma?
Oh yes, it was great fun. It was I could hardly keep a straight face. I mean, I did. But when we cut, I would just laugh hysterically. But which I do when I'm dealing with those horror things. There was a scene I'm playing as a Romanian clairvoyant with long black hair, and there was a scene where I'm having a seance and all these people are sitting around. Suddenly the lights go out, just darkness, and then there's a scream and the lights come back up and everybody's in a different position. And I think I'm in somebody, or maybe it was me, I don't remember, lying across the table. And it was so funny to me in that dark that we were all running around to look right when the lights came back up. I could just hardly get through it. And then I did, and then they'd say, cut, and then I could, scream laughing. It was all so silly and funny, and it was terrific. But the day that we were on location somewhere in another state, and my ex-husband came to visit that city for another reason, doing a story about it. And so he came to visit the set the day when he was there, and it was the day that I was beheaded. My head was rolling. was rolling on the floor, and I was still talking. The head was still talking.
What was that like working with Robert Rodriguez?
He reminded me of another director who I loved working with, John Frankenheimer. There was a boldness and a directness and a confidence and daring. I was right. I was very caught up in that. It was very nice to. You never knew where he was going to put the camera, and there were always surprises. I loved that.
Now, in 2006, you directed a short film. It was called Property.
Yes, it came out of a minor tragedy. It was a big tragedy, but I was alive, so that's why it's minor. There was a big landslide at my house, and I escaped before my bedroom. I was in bed, was covered with mud, and I got out, and the city took responsibility for what happened. A fire hydrant had been cut down accidentally, and the water had gushed down on my hill behind my house all night and undermined the whole house. And anyway, the city put me up in an apartment for 4 years. Took them that long to get my house back in shape. And during that time, I had nothing there. I had become a sculptor during those 15 years that I was not working as an actress. And I've always painted, and I had everything that I had ever made with my hands and anything that I really cared about that was important in storage. So here's this sterile apartment, and I just needed to create something. And I had remembered being in love with the short story. I just thought I yearned to see it, to really see it in color and with people. And so I got the rights to it, and I wrote a screenplay. There was most of the dialogue was mine, and I just kept going forward because I didn't know that I shouldn't. And got a friend who helped me with getting a crew together, and I did it.
Did you finance the film yourself, or did you have people, help you out with that, or?
I just, I wanted other people to finance it, and I just became impatient and decided to hell with it, and I used my own money.
So how long from conception to completed film was this? 6 months, a year?
I'd say 6 months and 5 days of shooting.
How long for editing?
I would say a month.
It's
only 25 minutes long.
Right. But, was that... For me, if I'm working on a project, my favorite part, I love the doing, but I love having it done and being sitting and, working and editing it, because at least it's like, what you've shot is you've shot, and now you can kind of work with the footage. Which, now that you have made a film, did you have a favorite part of the making of it?
Yes, it was a scene that I invented completely, of this older woman taking a bath, and actually being given a bath by her caretaker. And a friend wrote all the original music for it. And there's a wonderful song that plays over the sensual bath of this woman who's in her 80s, called Honey. And this young man with the big sponge is bathing her, and it's really lovely. And the song is lovely too, but it's to be I always felt it would be a part of the trilogy, um, I wanted to do 2 more short films connected to that. And we had the crash right then, and it was impossible to borrow money. Nobody at that time, and so just time went on, and I don't know. I think I got a new knee, and but it's always on my mind to finish it.
Well, I definitely hope you will. That sounds great. Where can people find the first one, Property? Is there a place they can see it online, or is it available on Netflix?
Oh, it's not. It's in my house.
Oh.
I have to come knock on my door.
There'll be special screenings on the couch.
Yes.
Well, I hope someday we not only get to finish the trilogy but we all get to see the whole trilogy. When it's all done, you can put it out as one big DVD box set.
I really would love to get that done. So here's something you probably don't know about me. I did my first onstage musical less than a year ago in Santa Barbara.
What was it called?
A Little Night Music. I played Madame Arfeld.
How was that experience for you?
It was great. It was wonderful. One of the best times of my life. I would just sit in the wings and listen to all the numbers every night, and it thrilled me. It's Stephen Sondheim's musical. I think perhaps the best one. And I, coincidentally, I'm going to New York shortly, and somebody heard that I was going to be in the audience at this Sondheim Unplugged thing at a club, and they asked if I would do one of my numbers from the show. So I said yes, like a fool. And so now I'm going to be doing it. And I haven't done it in almost a year. So.
Well, I'm sure you'll be wonderful.
I hope so.
So, besides this upcoming performance, what are you working on currently?
Just things with my hands. I just I have to use my hands. I guess that sounds weird.
Well, no. Are you creating things? Or are you just because I know for a while you did baking.
Well, no, I like to build things. When I'm not carving stone, I did a lot of baking for many years. I baked all my bread for about 30 years.
Yeah. I was in my research. It said that's what your grandfather did for a living. He was a baker.
Right. He had a wonderful bakery in Detroit. Yeah.
So, what do you enjoy baking today? Do you still bake your own breads? Is there anything else that's considered the your specialty?
I haven't been baking lately at all. I've moved recently.
Okay.
I sold my dear house, and I'm now living somewhere else. I haven't baked here at all, and I'm not cooking that much either. I'm looking for something to do that doesn't require a garden. I'm looking. Also, I did a bust of my daughter. At the moment that she was holding her baby the first time after it was born. I misfired it. I'd like to do something more with it. I don't know what.
Are you going off of a picture, or did she pose for you at one point?
I was doing a play in New York when she actually gave birth, and I didn't make the birth in time. Baby had been born already, but there were snapshots of her in bed at the hospital holding her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with that. It's about 2 feet high. And anyway, I enjoy doing it. Now I'm going to New York to see a friend who's in a new play, Rosemary Harris.
Uh-huh.
And also the director I worked with twice. He directed me in Cherry Orchard, and also he directed the 2 Molly Kazan plays that I did back in the late 50s. He became the dean of the drama school of Northwest University in North Carolina University, and retired recently. And a play he wrote the book for and the lyrics of a musical version of How Green Was My Valley, which is called A Time for Singing, is being redone for a very short time in New York, and it had to close up when it opened during the writer's strike 40 years ago. So it hasn't been done since, and I'm going to be there for the opening of that and see Rosemary Harris and go to this benefit, and then I'm going to sing my song, and then I'm going back to Woodstock to spend some nice time with my old friends.
And hopefully we'll see you soon on the Showtime series Twin Peaks Season 3.
Well, that would be nice.
Yes, it would be. Well, Piper, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy woman, so I just wanted to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the time.
Oh, well, I enjoyed it.